Welcome to POV, your favorite political commentary series. And yes, we are outside having to use the Lord's light because the ones we pay for are load shedding. So let's get it. Last week, President Emerson Mnangagwa announced a cabinet shakeup affecting one key ministry, energy and power development. It's out with Joram Gumbo and in with advocate Fortune Chibabest Chasi. Now, every time there's a shakeup of this nature, especially one in an area where there was gross incompetence, we always seem to think that the next person's job should be pretty easy, right? Mr. Chasi, you have one job. Just don't do what the last guy was doing. Wrong. When it comes to this particular ministry, Mr. Chasi has some real work cut out for him. So today, we're going to examine the road ahead for Chibabest to give you a better idea of the sheer work cut out for him, as well as look at the man himself to see if he's really best fit for this role. The Ministry of Energy and Power Development covers two main aspects of our economy, fuel and electricity. Now, as we all know, these two things are in short supply at the moment, with fuel queues having been a normal part of our daily lives since late 2017. Electricity load shedding by ZESA has also recently returned, bringing back memories and skills of the dark ages, and again redefining the meaning of quality time with your family, because it's either we're sleeping or we're talking, right guys? But these are the two biggest challenges facing the newly promoted minister: fuel and electricity supply. Well, actually there's a third. Poor and unclear communications has been an area of great concern with this ministry. There's always been a great disconnect between what the ministry says and what we actually go through, as evidenced by Joram's constant "we have more than enough fuel in this country," and his greatest hit, "fuel queues are evidence that there's fuel." Madness. And this is why we like Advocate Chasi, or Chibabest, as he's affectionately called by his many social media followers. He's seen as a fresh, new, dare we say, honest face in the Mnangagwa administration. He has led great comms during his stint as Deputy Minister of Transport, often to the extent that his followers have even called for him to be made the actual minister over his often media-shy Minister Joel Biggie Matiza. But let's be honest, he's a very likable guy who gives off an air of confidence and competence. But is his appearance enough to rein in a ministry fraught with allegations of corruption and mismanagement and threatens to bring the entire country to a grinding halt? Only time will tell. Now, with fuel queues killing human productivity, Chasi needs to look at ways to make it more readily available. This means working with the Minister of Finance, Mthuli 2% Ngube, and the RBZ Governor, John Panunisa Mangwe, who you would have thought we would have given a nickname, but we haven't, because his second name will suffice. In January, government announced a fuel price increase of 150% by increasing the duty component of the price. In February, the Reserve Bank governor removed the contentious 1:1 parity with the US dollar and moved to an interbank exchange rate. Now, this wasn't applied to fuel, so the $3 prices we're currently paying are still based on the 1:1 between the RTGS and the US dollar. If this subsidy is removed as is planned, and we agree that it should be, the price of fuel will rise to the $5 region. Now, before you think we're crazy for advocating for this, what does this mean? As a country, we don't have enough available forex to support subsidized fuel. So we continue to get stockouts while waiting for the RBZ to source financing to make payments on behalf of fuel companies. Removal of the 1:1 on fuel will allow fuel companies to participate on the interbank market and source their forex at the right price. And this will improve the accessibility. Now to electricity. This again is a heavily subsidized sector. And at the previous 1:1 in environment, we were paying the equivalent of 9.8 US cents per unit of power. Now we're paying the equivalent of 3 US cents. ZESA, on the other hand, produces power at Wange at more than 10 US cents and at Kariba around 3 US cents, giving an average cost of 6.5 US cents while importing from the region at around 13 US cents. And if this is not making sense, basically we don't pay enough for the electricity needed, guys. So now we hear that the power utility needs to pay around $80 million in arrears to South Africa and Mozambique so we can get an increased imports to reduce load shedding. But this is not going to be easy if we're not paying enough. Furthermore, ZESA is owed a gobsmacking $1.2 billion by the nation at large. And this is the split approximately as we've seen it. 300 million by households, 460 million from farmers, 100 million by government parastatals, and 400 million by local authorities. The power utility itself owes almost half of that, 500 million to its creditors. This mismatch has been raised as one of the sticking points to the proposed tariff hikes. But why do we have load shedding in the first place? The answer partly lies in history. Power expansion plans set in the 70s and 80s were never implemented both locally and regionally. Mangwe generators, which have lacked adequate maintenance, are constantly breaking down. Kariba relies on major rainfall upstream in the DRC and Zambia, while the expansion project implemented recently uses water-efficient generators. The current drought has led to depleted water levels in the dam, meaning that the hydropower station has reduced production to match the water. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a Kariba to talk about. Now, energy shortages are a common thing in this region. You think when South Africans are stressing about Eskom and power cuts, they don't also have reason to complain? But that is why the region created the SAPP, or the Southern African Power Pool, which is a market in which countries can buy electricity supply on a periodic basis to cover them in times like this. I'll explain details of this when I go live on Thursday. But if the money owed to ZESA came through, imagine how different things would be right now. Basically, what we're saying is, as a nation, we must pull through together in helping Mr. Chasi to overcome these things. But is there any immediate relief on this electricity issue that doesn't rely on water or money? Well, what about the sun? Unfortunately, solar projects that have been touted as the savior of our power situation just haven't materialized. We all know the drama with Intertrek, in which ZESA dished out $5 million to finance the building of a shed and a fence in Gwanda, as well as the Kwekwe solar farms, which just haven't done anything. We hope that there will be a positive resolution of these issues to benefit, of course, the country. ZESA has 3 major solar projects stuck in the doldrums because of these similar issues. But we hope that Advocate Chasi will be the guy who overcomes these issues. Because there are some positives to look at in the renewable sector, with a smaller solar farm in Nyabira looking to soon commission a 25 megawatt plant that will feed into the national grid. These are the type of projects that the country should lean towards. Basically, the episode we've just done is to try and highlight that Advocate Chasi has got a mammoth task ahead of him, and he's going to require our patience and our support. And now, the reason why we've taken this approach is because we honestly believe that we don't get that many wins in this country. We don't often have that many things to celebrate about, but we earnestly believe that the Advocate, Chibabest, is one of them. He's a guy who's really tried to make things work in his previous sector, and he's a guy with a record of wanting to stand up for what is right. These are the sort of characters we need to start seeing at the forefront, and these are the guys who need our support. As he takes on this ridiculous task ahead of him, guys, let's just support him. We need all the positive energy we can possibly lend to him as he gets into his role. This is Kuda Mangwe wishing you a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night.